it sometimes. All right. Hello. Happy Thursday, everybody. Um, it is so nice. Everybody's kind of got a quick hello in the chat and where you're from. Thanks so much for doing that. That is one of the ways that we prove to the BACB that you guys are here and that you're participating the whole time. You will have access to the PDF down in that green button that's below Katy and I. And within the PDF, you will find the CEU form link. I keep hearing that it's challenging to get that link if you're on an iPad. I also keep getting feedback about it's challenging to comment in the chat when you're on your phone. And I know these are great to listen to while you're driving, right? If any of your supervisees need unrestricted hours, I would say that these CEU events count, but let them know if they're working on it on their phone. It's hard to comment in the chat. So you have to scroll over. But anyway, I just wanted to kind of fill those in for everybody. And we'll get started. I am so excited to talk about this topic. I feel like it is so important. Today, we're really going to be talking about the fact that operant conditioning. Oh my gosh, yes, my screen share is working. Oh, good. Some people are in the car. And so, yeah, if you need to scroll over to comment in the chat. It's definitely, I had to test it to find out what we needed to do. Yeah, I feel like these count for unrestricted hours if they're watching the recording. I don't know what other supervisors feel, but I feel like that's a pretty great unrestricted hours use. Katy, what do you think about that? Are you on the page with me? Okay.
Yeah, for sure.
Cool.
I wish I had that option back
yeah.
when I was getting my hours. I drive so much, or I did then at least.
Me too. And then actually, I was talking with Erin, who's one of our RBTs who's doing her BCBA hours. We've set up these projects for her to do. The RBT training is one of them that she's been working on. And our next one is going to be a little social emotional kind of 2-week teacher curriculum using DNAV and Happy Medium. So that has been really fun. If everybody has, while we're on the supervision topic, because we're going to be talking about supervision today. I think those project-based learning has been a great way to do unrestricted hours rather than just kind of sitting and reading, research or whatnot. So I'm glad other supervisors think they count. I think they're totally relevant for sure. So, all right, now we'll get down to business. But so operant conditioning is always at play. That's what we're talking about today. I can't change my intervention intensity, or can I? And the short answer is I believe, yes, you can. And there's that CEU form for everybody, just to point it out so people see where it is. That's our form of code words. So if you do know people who are going to watch this later, let them listen to where it is. Let's jump into our shared purpose matrix. Again, today our shared purpose is really thinking about how do I modify the intensity of my intervention for the individual that's presenting in front of me. I feel like this really jives well with our field right now in terms of looking at providing compassionate care, also trauma-informed care. So when we're thinking about our shared purpose today of recognizing that operant conditioning is at play all the time, but we can still modify our intensity of intervention based on objective behaviors. So if I start off with who or what is important to you in our shared purpose today, the first thing that is important to me is the individual. And feel free to participate if you want to. You don't have to, but certainly fun to get other people's ideas of kind of what our shared purpose is, what's important to our group today. I think dissemination is important to me today. I think, and look I got a new, it's not even a work now. Anyway, everybody knows about my spelling challenges, but I did get a new spelling tool, and it's been awesome. All right, parent caregivers.
Did you just abandon dissemination?
Okay, there it is. My best shot again. And let's see what my spelling.
I thought you were just going to casually give up on that one.
I'm really good when those heavy emotions show up about spelling, just being like, I'll come up with a different word, or I'll just casually kind of glance over it. Forget it, guys. Look at that. I need a DI. Actually, I have a little side note on the spelling thing. I've been working in a school with the 2E population, and I've been in OG spelling lessons, and it has changed my spelling ability. I don't know if I've said that before. Hopefully I'm not too squirrely today, but man, being in that OG stuff has been incredible. All right, RBTs or staff, working with the individual. Yes.
I think it goes with dissemination, but like reaching new groups of people.
Sorry, Katie, say that again.
I think it goes with dissemination, but reaching new groups of people.
Yeah. Yeah, opening some eyes, right? Kind of ourselves, our stakeholders. Yes. Yes. Oh. And yes, typing in front of other people is hard too. It does. It makes that anxious emotion show up for me, and then I make so many more mistakes, which is okay. Self-compassion here, right? I'm modeling some self-compassion. Yeah, reaching new groups. I think shifting thinking is another shared purpose. In this, especially with this operant conditioning at play all the time, I've had some intense conversations around this very topic with a lot of BCBAs. So I think that's a great who or what's important to us and our shared purpose. What's the yucky stuff that really gets in the way, right? We have a lot of empirical evidence that says operant conditioning's at play all the time. We know this. So I think for me, I get conflicted a lot, and I have anxiety show up when I'm thinking about this, kind of producing escape, for times where the individual just isn't whole. Like sometimes I'm like, oh gosh, am I doing the right thing? That anxiety and being conflicted about the science and the human kind of shows up for me big time. I think another one is fear around the parents not understanding kind of what we're doing. What about you, Katie? What yucky stuff shows up for you around this topic?
I think you just nailed it with all of that. I mean, especially like fear around the parent or fear around staff. Like, are they not going to understand what I'm doing? Are they going to be upset that I'm doing it? But then at the same time, if I don't do this, it's not going to get better. And I just kind of get stuck in that moment there with all of those thoughts in my head.
Oh my gosh. I'm going to say overactive advisor too, because we're going to talk a little bit about DNAV today and some of the strategies, some of the skill acquisition targets that we want in place when we're thinking about these tools also. All right. So what behaviors will you see or hear me using to get relief from the yucky stuff that shows up? You're going to see me doing a lot of kind of on and off. On and off. I am going to be kind of talking your ear off about it and being like, this is why we're doing this. This is why it's okay. And I'm also going to be like, all right, like, nope, I'm kind of done talking about it. That little on and off. Current reauthorization. What is approved versus what will happen if I change them? That is oh my gosh, what will happen to current auths? Yep, I just submitted one of those today. I luckily have a nice graph that I'll share with you guys later. But yeah, those current reauthorizations, right? What is going to be approved? Oh my gosh. And for those, you're going to see me overproducing. This is why we did this. Linking things. What else are you going to see me doing? You're probably going to see me doing what I'm doing today to get some relief, which is talking with others about this really important topic. All right, you got any, Katie? What relief moves, what behaviors would we see that are helpful or not helpful, right? Relief moves are not always not helpful. They can be helpful, right?
I think for this topic, talking with others is my biggest.
Yeah, for sure. All right, what behaviors will I see or hear you using to move towards what's important to us today as a group? I'm going to say willing to think outside the box. I'm going to also say view the human. View the human in front of me. You are going to hear me talking a lot about objective behaviors I see in the individuals I serve. Training. Go
Okay.
ahead.
I would say with strategies like this one that sometimes can seem like super backwards to some other people, I like to be like super direct. Like, what do you think of this? What are your concerns with this? Just right from the bat.
Yep, direct questions right off the bat. I'm going to get input. Because there are some individuals that don't show up differently. So that's okay. You might not use this strategy if you have an individual who's a pretty consistent, across the board. My husband's like that. He's just a level guy. I show up very differently. We're good examples of this strategy. Get input, collaborate, and do a lot of talking. Talk about this. Talk about how this works. All right. And now let's get into it. I've gotten a couple of, I love the shared purpose matrix. I feel like it puts me in a really flexible space to notice all of these things showing up during these presentations, because I feel like Katie and I pick topics that are a little bit, on the edge sometimes. So I find this shared purpose matrix really sets me up to be flexible while we're doing this presentation, and open to hearing kind of what, I'm going to put that, open to hearing others' input. So Katie, do you think you're going to have a chance to notice this stuff showing up?
I will.
Yeah, me too. All right.
Random side note for you, and I've actually talked about this in this group before. I have one of my kiddos who I use the matrix as like my permanent product with him. Yeah. And at the end of the year, he typically gets like super overwhelmed by schoolwork, and it's not happening this year. And he told me at our session yesterday, he's like, you know what? I really noticed that talking to my teachers is what's super helpful. I'm like, amazing.
Wow. The Matrix is such a powerful tool.
And when he said it in my head, the Matrix, that was just like flashing in my mind. I was like, there it is. He's using it.
And using it without sitting down to do it. Like, right. That's so cool. What a fun moment. I love that. All right. So just a quick, it seems like most people in the group are familiar with the noticing grid, which is our point of view in the happy medium approach. Level 1 is our contextually flexible behavior. Level 2 is where we're getting a little awkward for the environment. And level 3 is we're clearly too big. Or if you have an individual that gets too small, level 3 can be way too small for the environment as well. Our column over to the right is what other people see. This is our time to shine as behavior analysts. What does this individual look like as their escalation curve increases, or their escalation elevator, however you want to say that? And our next column over, what others will do, is our reactive strategies or our proactive strategies. At a level 1, how are we going to reinforce? At a level 2, how are we going to intervene at precursor behaviors? And then at level 3, how are we going to keep that individual and ourselves safe? Our next column over is how can I get back to a level 1? And those are our replacement behaviors, or those are our strategies at a level 1 to sustain those contextually flexible behaviors. Now that the weather's getting nicer, one of mine is going into my little pottery studio that I have. That is one way that I support myself in staying contextually flexible. Other people have yoga, going to coffee with friends, whatever that might look like for the individual. I'm getting better at doing a really quick loop around that matrix, or around the noticing grid. And there are a lot of crowdcasts on the noticing grid if people are interested in learning more about that. And then we are going to talk a lot about DNAV. I continue to get a lot of questions about how DNAV fits into the happy medium approach, how we utilize both of these tools simultaneously. So I'm going to try to model that during a lot of these upcoming crowdcasts. so that people can see how we support that access to psychological flexibility, first with building the foundation with the happy medium approach, and then interweaving some of this DNAV once we've developed those contextually flexible behaviors and that ability to sustain a level 1 on the noticing grid. While we're talking about supervision today too, I feel like DNAV has become almost like within Eclipse, we talk about DNAV during supervision. It seems like a lot of us as a team have started to really, I guess, utilize DNAV for ourselves because it works so well. And so we speak that language during supervision. I'll be like, hey, put your Discoverer cape on, step in and try something new, see how it works, step outside of your comfort zone and see what happens. And that's a Discoverer skill. Advisor is kind of that inner voice. I hear a lot of other kind of therapy modalities using inner coach, inner critic. I've got kids that use both. I still prefer advisor. Which advisor has the microphone? Is it your helpful advisor or your not helpful advisor? But your advisor is the tool that helps you stay safe, and it helps you avoid unnecessary trial and error learning. These are things you've already learned. They work. And you want to make sure the individual is tracking workability, right? Is what you are trying to avoid trial and error actually working, or is it not? And then your valuer. We don't use behaviors unless things are important to us, right? So what is important to you in the moment right now? And we're going to talk about that a bunch down the road here. Our noticer, which I feel like is the foundational character. You've got to notice emotion showing up. You got to notice body sensations. You've got to notice the context around you. And then we have the social or the self view, which is who am I, right? Who am I as a whole selfing individual? We're not always defined by our past. We don't have to believe everything our advisor says, right? That advisor sometimes can be lying to us. We're capable of growing, improving, and we're capable of creating value, even if we're not seeing it at the moment. We can move towards what we want and what's helpful for us in the world. And then that social view, which supports those ability to create connections with other people, right? A lot of times, I love how they say people are our heaven or our hell. It's so true, right? We love that social connection, but then, man, it's challenging sometimes. A lot of those heavy emotions, show up. Your noticer notices those when we're interacting with others. And I don't know, for me, I notice a lot of that when I am supervising, right? Supervision is a very challenging position to be in. Sometimes it's easy, sometimes it's hard. So that social view from DNAV can be really helpful as we're talking about supervision. Anyway, try it yourself. Jump in, dive in. I think it's definitely helpful. My child uses it now too, along with her happy medium language. I haven't heard my husband start using it, but I wouldn't be surprised if that comes relatively quickly. He uses happy medium language fluently without ever having been trained in it. Probably better than I do at this point in time. Okay, so we're going to kind of frame out this interventionist tool. And this is our job as the behavior analyst to set the stage for an RBT to be successful with demand modifications based on objective behaviors that we're seeing from the individual during session. Right? We have some clients or some individuals that we work with that show up differently from day to day, right? Some days you might show up and you get this bubbly, excited to engage, like, hey, I'm ready to go. And then other days you show up and you get this person that's kind of curled up in the corner with a really low affect, not wanting to engage at all, maybe even the slightest engagement from you results in an increase in behavior or an increase in level to a level 2 or level 3 on the noticing grid. So, although we know that operant conditioning is at play all the time, we can modify demands based on objective behaviors that individual is showing us. And I think it is actually more successful than keeping intervention demands and intensity the same level. And on those more challenging days for those individuals, like say they're sick, say they have, I don't know, it's the end of the year and they have state testing at school. I just saw an individual, that was super challenging. If we keep intervention demands the same, we're going to spend a lot of time in that fight, flight, freeze kind of safety zone where no learning is occurring. We're outside of the engaged and learning zone. So within the happy medium approach, we have this framework. We call it ABC skill access. And it relates back up to the noticing grid. So A access is maintaining level 1 for most of the day, right? With doable pops to a level 2, but we're able to get back down. B access is defined as mostly level 1, but popping to a level 2 often and needing support to remain at a 1, right? They need more interventionist support to remain at that level 1. And we've probably seen 1 or 2 level 3 behaviors, right? So that's kind of B access. And those are really well defined based on the noticing grid. So any individual can kind of come in and be like, oh, look, we've got an A access. Oh, look, we got a B access. And then C access is defined as mostly level 2s and level 3 for that day. And then we also have an everyday column, right? What are you going to do for that human every single day? So what we want to do as the behavior analyst, I think I've started talking a little bit about kind of this flattening the hierarchy, right? The RBTs are the ones that are with these guys day in, day out. They see these objective behaviors. This is a great time to really ask them to provide you with some support. Hey, what objective behaviors do you see this individual using on an A access day when they're maintaining a level 1 most of the day? What do you see when they're maintaining kind of a 1, but they're popping to a 2? They really need you to help. What does that look like? Try to get that RBT to support you in creating this. Also, so that they know what they're doing, right? They know when they're coming in, these are the objective behaviors they're looking for. And it's going to then lead them in their decision tree, right? We're trying to kind of move a little bit away from this linear thinking. There isn't always just one way to do this, right? We want to teach RBTs to follow a decision tree and to use that discoverer and kind of step into a space where maybe, hey, I haven't done this before, but let's see how it works. And then obviously I'm going to report to my supervisor, and then if that worked, I'm going to put that kind of in my advisor category there. Hey, I've got this. Like, I'm going to try that next time. That worked really well. I don't have to do trial and error next time, right? Obviously under the close supervision, but we do need them to develop that decision tree as they're working with more complex individuals, especially those that are not always acting under kind of the umbrella of direct contingencies, right? Maybe they're operating off of rule governed behavior, right? We need a decision tree. We need them to develop that decision tree and this ABC skill access. And then obviously every day helps to develop that decision tree for them. So I know that these are a little bit small. We tried to make and I'll try to make it bigger, but you guys have the PDF too. There we go. That looks a little bit better. Hopefully that helps. Here are a couple of examples from current clients that we're working with. I want to remind people of kind of the pendulum, right? Like we aren't kind of all human, all science. We're trying really to settle in the middle, not sitting on these pillars and having respect for families. So you're going to see some language in here like non-compliance. We work really hard with the family to create these documents so that everybody's using them. And there are some families that their compliance is still really a big part of their culture and who they are. And how they want their individual to show up in the world. So obviously we work on supporting them and understanding the difference between, instructions that serve a purpose versus just compliance. But you're going to see some of that because we've got to, we have to work with the family as well. It isn't just all our idea or all their idea. We've got to work together. So for this individual, and this is great. This was developed by one of our RBTs and then approved by me as their supervisor. So an A day, what this individual looks like, he's been at a 1 most of the day. He's following directions and using language to get his needs met, is able to accept a no, is able to tolerate unexpected changes or expected changes, is able to tolerate being asked to do something not fun, like come in from inside, can shift to something quiet, calm, and slow with 1 or less prompts, like just is able to go for it. If he does reach a 2, he's able to cope and bring himself back to a 1. There's that needing less support. 0 to 1, short, less than 5-minute red level or level 3. Sometimes we use Katie's kids all love green, yellow, red. Mine like level 1, 2, 3 usually. So it's so funny. You'll see that kind of intermixed in here. So what are we going to do on those days, right? If we have a behavior, we're going to prompt for coping skills, label emotions, try replacement behaviors, wait for him to utilize coping skills. I think I copy and pasted the wrong chunk here. I definitely did. Anyway, these are his replacement kind of behaviors. But anyway, let's shift over to kind of B day. A day is our teaching day. This is where we are working on all of the skills, and we'll see that in the next example. So I apologize, my miss on that, but this is our teaching day. A days are where we can sustain that engaged and learning zone. So that's when we are going to have the most intense level of intervention, obviously still making sure that we maintain that A access day. So our B access day, again, the definition is mostly level 1, but popping to a level 2 often, needing support to stay at a 1. And you'll see on here too, we have ratings, rating 3 on the data. You're going to see the chart down below, rating 2 on the data, rating 1 on the data for a C day. So the definition of B day is he's bouncing back and forth between a 1 and a 2. He's stuck on no items or activities. That an example of that is like, hey, can it turn into a yes for us to go outside today? The answer from parents is a no. Then we're perseverating. We're stuck on asking, hey, can we go outside every 5 to 10 minutes? Asking for no items or activities that we already know are a no for the day. That might be something like baking or making spaghetti. Shifting from one activity to the next without completion, that really fast, just I'm not really engaged in anything. I'm just moving through activities. Not answering questions. Siri wants to play today too. Not answering questions or statements. So he's not pausing long enough to do that. Low tolerance for no demands or transitions, 2 or more instances of interrupting. And I love this guy's got interrupting cow going, and he actually now catches me interrupting, and he'll be like, interrupting cow, Rosalie, moo. Didn't your advisor tell you I was talking? So funny. Anyway, 2 or more instances of interrupting, moving faster than the environmental conditions. So that would be an example if they're sitting down doing Legos, he's moving faster than sitting. He might be standing up, he might be moving around, he might be bouncing all over the place, things like that. So that's our definition for B day. C day includes all of a B day, 2 or more instances of jumping on furniture, non-compliance, property destruction, or elopement out of sight. So that's how we objectively define those days. And we are collecting data on this, right? Because if operant conditioning is at play all the time, we've got to be making sure that we are collecting data to make sure that the intervention intensity modifications we're making are working and they're helping us to move forward and reduce challenging behavior, things like that.
Rose, that was the question I was going to ask you. I know when we first started the ABC days, like that was a concern, was that our kiddos were going to learn that they could get big behavior and kind of get the environmental demands lowered. And so we started kind of keeping track of it with some of, our intervals of at a level 1. Have you ever come across a kiddo that this intervention did wind up shaping bigger behavior? Like
No,
I was thinking I haven't yet on my end.
no, I have not. I have not at all. This intervention has been beyond helpful, I think. we've moved from places where we were kind of stuck
Right.
to better places. I feel like is
Yeah,
that what you've seen as well?
that's been my experience. I was wondering if you had some like one-offs maybe that you ran into, but I definitely haven't.
I haven't yet. That doesn't mean it isn't coming. but
Right.
but I think what I've found is and thanks for that's a great kind of squirrel moment, Katie, because I think what I've found most of the time is that the client takes a deep breath, the RBT takes a deep breath, and the family takes a deep breath, and everybody's able to kind of join and really work on their relationship on those harder days rather than being tasked with getting stuff done like the taskmaster. And I think it's allowed everybody to take a deep breath where everybody's like, all right, like I'm going to be heard, I'm going to be understood. Today's a harder day for me, and it's okay for me to do less. Like that's okay. So I think that's been my history.
Yeah, like it almost it you're saying it like acts, it's reinforcing not just for the client without them really knowing that we're doing it, but for everybody who's implementing it too. It's like, okay, I can breathe.
Yeah,
I don't have to fight through this.
yeah, I don't have to fight. I can drop the rope. It's okay to have those
Yeah.
relationship building days. So, and I think you can kind of see down here on these we have some of our reactionary strategies in here. But then we also have things like be careful about the number of demands that you place both verbally and environmentally after re-engaging. Move the continuum of shared control over in his direction, right? Allow him to pick, or just let him engage in an activity, right? It is so challenging for individuals to sustain a level 1 or that contextually flexible behavior without something to do. If we're just asking them to calm down, especially if they're in this B access day with nothing to do, it's going to be really, really hard. So
I was
go
just
ahead.
about to add that the only thing I can think of, like I have had kiddos that we find get stuck on those B access days quite a bit, but those are also the kiddos that we find can't sustain a level 1. So it's
Yeah.
not the ABC intervention that's causing those B days to keep showing up. It's the fact that they just cannot maintain a level 1 on their own. So they're always running at a B day, regardless of what we're doing.
Oh my, thank you, Katie, for bringing that up. Right. So we talk a lot about these individuals. They come to us for intervention. They don't have a level 1, right? If they don't have a level 1, we're kind of automatically operating in kind of this B day zone, right? Or sometimes we have individuals that come to us that have a level 1 and a level 3, but don't have a level 2, right? I call those kind of the 0 to hero guys, because they can hold it together, but they not. Yeah, or they pair you with being adverse. Yes. Oh my gosh. That is huge, right? Oh my goodness.
And
So
that's
it's
why that permission to build a relationship is so important. Like it's okay.
yes. Yeah. If you've got a RBT who's reporting that they are showing up and that individual is immediately getting to a 2 or a 3 on the noticing grid, we've got a relationship challenge. We are kind of seen as averse. We are now paired with this is too hard. I can't do this. I'm going to get to fight or flight so I don't have to do this. And we don't want individuals to have to work that hard to get relief from things that they can't do, right? Like there are some days that I wake up that I definitely am slightly different than like I'm having a B day. And if I don't do something different that day, the night's gonna I'm gonna be totally zonked out by like 7:30. Actually, I was just talking to a teacher about that too. But yeah, I think that's so important, right? If we notice that B day, we've got to pause. The relationship and the ability to move that individual towards what's important to them is more important than our agenda, right? Our agenda of teaching skills ultimately is going to support them. But if we don't pause in those moments because we are too stuck on our agenda, we're going to have to restart that relationship development again. The next time you come, just pause, slow down. It's okay. When we see an individual having a C day, which is mostly that level 2 and 3, we remove demands. Just drop your agenda for the day, repair the relationship, work on engagement. Again, like I said before, you cannot sustain contextually flexible behavior without engagement of some sort. Nobody kind of just sits. I mean, actually, I guess I shouldn't say nobody, but most people in the world don't just sit to get themselves in a better place. Or to get themselves back to a level 1, demonstrating contextually flexible behavior. They usually do something, go for a walk, play their favorite game, watch a video. I love sitting with my dogs. My dogs will help me get back to a level 1. So on that C day, it's okay to drop the rope. It's okay to drop demands. Be there for that human. Even though that operant conditioning, like that is at play. And that's why we have to take data to see what's happening. But again, I have not seen an individual take advantage of this system and continue to show up, with more C days. I've actually seen the very opposite, which is I start to see more A days than B and C days, because we're working at a level of intervention intensity that matches their capabilities that day or that moment. So if we look at another one, this one's a little bit more kind of detailed in our kind of A day strategies. So this individual, we know that they're having an A access day. They're making jokes, they're smiling, they're able to shift off of preferred items, they're tolerating questions, they're having conversations, they're traveling to get their needs met, staying engaged in activities, shifting off of negative, talking out loud to get their needs met, using friendly tone of voice, willing to try something new, willing to step into that discover space. That is a really important A day objective behavior. They're willing to try something. So what are we going to do? We're going to engage. We're going to create a schedule. We're going to go over behaviors he can use to escape non-preferreds, right? We're going to be proactive about that. Even if they're perceived non-preferreds at the time. We're going to label his level. We're going to point out happy medium categories. You can see these are filled with our teaching opportunities. We're going to provide exposure to new activities. We're going to monitor the level of questions that we use, because we know that's an antecedent. That's a challenge for him. We're going to monitor the level of language we use. We're going to provide frequent breaks. We're going to prompt and reinforce coping skills with negative reinforcement. And we're going to try to get him to do some chores without protest. There's a parent goal in there. So that right there gives the RBT, hey, it's go time. All of our interventions that you, the BCBA, have created, here's your go. Like, this is your release. Go work on those. But again, watch, right? Watch how much you're doing, how many demands you're placing. Make sure that individual continues to be successful. On B days, flat affect, right? Popping in and out of activities on media, that kind of fleeting attention, not really sustaining engagement. More than 2 activities in 5-minute period, needs more than 2 prompts to shift in 15 minutes. If we're kind of stuck on a negative, stuck on doing a non-preferred, if we're needing prompts more than 2 in 15 minutes, that indicates a B day. 2 or less episodes of verbal protest, 3 or less misses on clearly defined actions by others. Like, you're standing too close to me when you're standing across the room. You came in my room without knocking on the door. That's another miss, right? On environmental events, when we clearly knocked on the door and said something out loud. Not friendly tone of voice or a high-pitched whine, fluctuating between okay and frustrated quickly. So we define that with the RBT, and actually in this instance, I think there were 2 BCBAs and an RBT on this case. So as a team, we develop these definitions and what we're going to do. So on a B day, we're increasing the frequency duration of breaks, using comments at a very low frequency. This individual, an antecedent to problem behavior, is just too much communication. And, blah, 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 we're chatty Cathy's over here. So we need to be very mindful of that. Use visuals with no verbals for prompts. Prompt immediately for adaptive escape. Hey, you can just tell me go, I'm going. You can wave your hand at me and I will leave. Whatever you need, just you tell me something, tell me some form of communication, I'm out of here. Or don't even say anything and I'm out. Provide non-verbally activities for that sustained engagement. C day is defined one or more level 3 behaviors, more than 5 misses on clearly defined social or personal boundaries, 5 or more episodes of verbal protesting lasting more than 5 minutes a piece. So when that happens, when we're having a C day, eliminate language, increase duration of breaks, provide nonverbal activities for sustained engagement. And then, as always, keep that relationship, right? How can I help you here? How can I support you in this challenging day? So when we're teaching this to RBTs, right, we need to, just like we would teach how to identify, challenging behavior at a level 2 and what strategies to utilize, we're going to do the same thing here. We want to make sure that an RBT can identify these in the moment. And we want to make sure that they're able to then also utilize the modifications that we've set up, right? Because if we are trying to utilize our strategies on an A day for a C day, we're going to get a level 3. We're potentially going to be in dangerous and unsafe. We're definitely going to be not engaged in learning. That's for sure. So these are just 2 examples for you guys, so you guys can get an idea how you can modify intervention and intensity based on objective behavior. And I'm so glad that Katy brought that question up about, like, have you ever had a kiddo that did show up with more C days? And I really haven't. I've seen this type of, I guess, programming almost act as a slingshot. When we can give them relief on those days that they're having a hard day, they're able to come back the next day, or if it's because they're not feeling well or they've got a cold, they're able to come back later, and we see more A access behaviors. So here's some data collection suggestions. You have to collect data around this system to make sure that, our skill acquisition is doing its job, because that's the point of this system, right? We want more A days so that we can build more skills. We don't want to spend time fighting behavior, because when we're fighting behavior, we're just fighting behavior. So we need to make sure that this system is doing its job and getting us. Oh, goodness, Siri is on me today. We want to make sure that our skill access is, when we're able to build those skills, and our skill acquisition programs are really helping us. So you can look at things like, take your A skill access, the behaviors that you have identified in there with the RBT, and you can decide, like, do I want to take data on those skills specifically? Do I want to take some intervals at a level 1? I think I use that one most frequently, because it shows me not only how often throughout the session are we demonstrating contextually flexible behavior, but it also tells me whether or not we're in an A, B, or C skill access. You can look at that frequency of level 2 and level 3 behaviors. You can look at intervals with demands. Are we having more intervals where we can place demands for skill acquisition targets? Or are we seeing an increase in our intervals without demands, which kind of says, ooh, like, we're shaping up kind of disengagement and not engaging in things that are new. But I think humans do want to show up to try. They want to do better. They want to reach out for what's important to them. You can take duration of environmental modifications. So if you're having to make a lot of modifications for those B and C days, you can look at the duration of that. You can look at whole interval demonstrating A access behavior, partial intervals with B or C access behaviors. If you have those guys that kind of do the whoop-de-whoop, where it's like, I can start out at A, I tank for a little bit after I've tolerated a no, and I'm at a C access for a little bit. but then I come back to an A axis. So you can look at that. What's that fluctuation? You can look at the number of days with B or C axis for environmental modifications too. So those are just some ideas, but that's something we as behavior analysts are great at. We can figure out a way to collect data to show, if we are shaping up those C days, which operant conditioning being at play, that is what we would expect to see, right? Which is why a lot of people are against this type of strategy. But if we are seeing that skill acquisition and we're seeing more A days, what is wrong with giving somebody a break when they're having a rough day or they're sick or something like that? So, some things that you are going to have to coach your RBTs on is how much time do we give that data, right? So, if your RBTs kind of checking in on their data, ooh, like I've had a lot of C days, you've got to support them in checking in with you, right? I've had a lot of C days in a row. What's going on here? If we've got dramatic changes, right? Maybe some of our skill acquisition tanks, maybe we're seeing more B and C days. That's an immediate phone call to your BCBA. Do we have historical events surrounding changes? I don't know if a lot of you guys work with individuals with a known history of trauma. Katy and I certainly do. And we can see fluctuations in these ABC skill access as well as our noticing grid around historical events that individual may or may not be able to accurately report at that time. So RBTs are, they're our heart, they're our eyes, they're our ears. Teach them to report that. Like, whoa, like the beginning of every school break has just been like brutal. Like, we've had C days for every single break from school. And I'm not even going to start talking about the transition to summer that's about to happen. So I've got some anxiety about that heavy stuff showing up. So here's a graph. This was for this top chart up here where we have kind of rating. Level 3 is an A day. Level 2 is a B day is a rating of 2. And C day is a rating of 1 on the data. So you can see this chart. And you can see we started out with B days and we've got more A days, but man, we still tank every once in a while. And we have a C day. But overall, we are seeing more stability, minus our kind of tank over here. And this is an individual with a history of trauma. So we know we're going to see that fluctuation. Anyway, so just an example of how you can take data on that skill access so you can see what's going on. Katy, do you take data on that differently or do you use that rating scale too?
No, I use it exactly the same.
Okay. I think that's the best way that I've found. And then I always have that percentage of, or that, intervals of at a level 1 or they.
Yeah.
Yep. All right. So now how do we support RBTs to use this ABC skill access tool? They have to have noticing skills, right? They've got to notice, they've got to prioritize. And this is where I say DNAV is not only helpful kind of for our clients, but I think it's really helpful almost as like a foundation tool within our practices. Those noticing skills are kind of critical, noticing what's showing up for that client. Our clients are not always good at letting us know I'm having a hard day, like one of our friends would be or a colleague would be. So those noticing skills are critical. Noticing those objective behaviors showing up that you guys as a team have put in the ABC skill access grid. When those change too, right? Because we've got different learners. We've got some learners that show up the same pretty much every day, right? And we know what we're going to get. Every once in a while, we have a B day or a C day, but they're pretty stable then in their responding. And then we have those guys that are really up and down. Like you show up and they're totally different. So those noticing skills are key. Because if we go in there on a C day with A expectations and demands, oh, we're just going to crush that human and their will to try. And we don't want to do that. Next is those relationship skills, right? We need to teach RBTs to prioritize the relationship with their client over our agenda, right? There's a line there that this isn't kind of, all relationship, all follow protocol. There's a balance, and the ABC skill access creates this objective way for us to define that and to implement that, right? But relationship should go above our agenda as the therapist. Obviously, we need to be working towards our goals. We need to be making progress in order to be on solid ethical ground. But that relationship needs to come first over that kind of, we have to get this done. So we need to teach RBTs like, hey, relationship is critical. If your individual's having a C day, don't push them and try to get them back to an A day. Sit and join them, be supportive, play with rocks for a couple hours if you need to, whatever you need to do to help that individual be okay in those moments where they're just not quite whole. So that relationship skills, those flexibility skills, right? It's okay if in the middle of your session, a kiddo shifts from A access to B access. You've just got to be flexible and move with them, right? Okay, I've got to reduce my intensity of my interventions. I can't provide quite as many opportunities right here. And then lastly, those communication skills, right? We need RBTs to communicate when something isn't going right, when we aren't seeing more A days. I mean, obviously it's our job to be watching the data, but they're in there. They might be in there for 20 hours a week. They should have a good handle on what's going on and be able to communicate like, hey, we've had all C access this week. Like, should we be doing something different? Is there something that we need to do to support this individual and getting back to demonstrating A access days? I feel like Katy and I just had a client who was kind of demonstrating like some B and C access days for a while. And then he went to a concert and it like refilled his bucket. And we've had like more A days since. It was like almost like he, as a person, hadn't been filling his own bucket. It was interesting. I don't know if you noticed that, Katy, but I've definitely noticed a difference.
I didn't really think about it, but now that you say it, yeah, there's been a couple of really stellar days this week. It's interesting.
Yeah. That I hadn't been seeing for a couple of weeks prior to that. I've been seeing more kind of a ho-hum B access,
Yeah, there was a lot of trying new things this week, it seemed like.
Yeah, stepping into that discover space. So again, we need to teach them kind of what the definition of those different skill access days are. We need to teach them how we're going to collect data on that because it is a little bit different sometimes. We want to help them know kind of those establishing operations, motivating operations, history, antecedents. For like another one of our guys, anytime mom's having a health crisis or something, we know we're going to see B and C access days. Like it's just, we know that that's going to happen. Thinking about those I think about the stack of rocks, which is really a tolerance to the number, duration, or intensity of environmental events. How many unexpected things can this individual tolerate? How many no's can they tolerate? So teaching RBTs, again, to use their noticer about the environment, how many rocks does this individual have stacked on them right now? Is this a time for me to ask something else? Let's see. Pretty ass, I might have missed this. How will you graph the data if the kiddo switches between A, B, C days multiple times in a session? That is a great question. So if we have one of those guys that does that, we will set up our data collection differently than you put right there. We will probably split that into kind of intervals and take data across how many intervals did we have kind of A, B, or C access, because it fluctuates so much throughout the entire session that we need to look at all of them all of the access levels in one session. I hope that makes sense. So we won't utilize that rating scale for individuals that fluctuate throughout the session. Katie, do you do that differently, or do you use kind of that interval system for that too?
No, I was gonna say I go straight to those intervals then.
And I'll take some baseline data on, hey, how long is kind of that typical shift, and I'll set some criteria around that. So, if we might end up showing kind of B access for kind of 15 minutes or whatnot. So I'll look at that kind of duration. Obviously, it's not going to be perfect all the time, but if you've got those roller coasters where it's, A for a little bit, whoa, we got a little too many rocks stacked on us. We'll take some kind of baseline data so that we can set that criteria to take some interval data. Hopefully
and for me too, I think that's also really helpful for RBTs who can take good session notes, where they're not giving us like overwhelming detail, but they kind of know the details that are important. So when you start to see that fluctuation, like you can go to the notes too and kind of figure out what was going on. Also, it helps when you have to go for, I guess I'm saying is those kids that fluctuate within the sessions, the interval data is helpful, but then it's also helpful on top of that, I find, to have RBTs who can take pretty concise notes on what's happening there.
Totally. Well, and I like a phone call about it too, because some of this stuff is a little nuanced, and sometimes like the session notes, teaching your RBTs to create those good session notes are critical, but even a phone call, because I think us looking through the bigger science lens that we have can see different things than those RBTs can. So having that conversation, I think, really helps.
Absolutely.
I didn't think I had enough material today, but clearly I had more than enough, as usual.
Have you ever had that problem?
No, I haven't. That's the problem. There's too much to talk about. So, another really important thing to teach RBTs using this strategy is how to communicate with family members when you're leaving a session, right? When you're leaving a session, this ABC skill access and your noticing grid is a very helpful communication tool, right? Where did we leave off, right? Because if the RBT leaves and family's kind of thinking, oh, we're having a great day, and then they go in and place a demand, and now we're at a level 3, that is not so helpful. So utilizing, hey, we're at a level 1 on the noticing grid, but we're having kind of a B day. We're needing some help staying at a level 1. Plus, I worked really hard on tolerating no today. There's a lot of rocks stacked. I would give them some time to take a deep breath. This actually, I just started utilizing this in a school setting with multiple paraprofessionals, and it's great. They're already utilizing ABC skill access. We're having a B day, Rosalie. There's been a lot of rocks stacked. We didn't like that geometry. That geometry is a sticky word. So these paraprofessionals are really picking up. They've got that. So it's really important. Yeah, everybody's agreed. The phone call along with the session notes. Session notes is a must with that, and ensuring it isn't always the negative information. Yes. Tara, thanks for saying that. We want to make sure that we teach RBTs too to report kind of the successful moments on those A days too, right? Like, wow, they were able to tolerate like 3 more, tolerance things today, 3 more episodes. And yeah, Lim, you should be good on the CEU. I think we got to hit that 45-50 minute mark and you're good. So anyway, that communication is huge, right? But teaching RBTs this framework, supporting them in delivering intervention at an intensity that the individual can handle, also making sure that they're communicating with family members or teachers or whatever setting you're in, another RBT that's coming in after the center. This is a great way for them to let them know where that individual is at. And then I went over all of that stuff at the top about DNAV to talk about the programming for reporting capabilities, right? So you guys have this to kind of look at and think about how you might create some programming around this. I think Katy, you can chime in for you, but if I have an ABC skill access program, I also almost always have this reporting capabilities program, because I want that individual to be able to report what they can and can't do. I want them talking out loud a lot about that, um, because that gives us insight onto those things that we can support them with to help them have more A days, or A access days. I also put programming in place for requesting demand modifications, right? Like, is this a time that I need this demand to go completely away? Like, I just like, don't even show it to me today because it's going to send me to a B day. Tara Drew, feedback sandwich when debriefing parents. Yeah, is the feedback I tried to give RBTs. Parents hear a ton of negatives and need some positives. That's huge. Yeah. So talk about like, even, oh my gosh, like, wow, we had a B day today, but we didn't get to a 3. Like, that's huge. Like, that was really cool. And I think that's helpful for parents too, to hear like, hey, we had a hard day, but instead of getting into a 3 on the noticing grid, look at, like, we came out of it whole. Here we are. I think those are really positive moments for parents to hear, and teaching RBTs to kind of see that positive piece as well, I think is huge, because I think sometimes we can get stuck in like, oh, I didn't really get anything done today, but you did. You helped that individual know that it's okay to have a bad day and people are going to be there to support you. Um, and that relationship remains. You live to teach another day, and you've got an opportunity next time you got an A day, you know what you're going to be working on. And then kind of the last kind of 2 pieces were really programming for problem solving and compromising. And then the last, Katy, did you have anything to say about do you put these 3 programs or 4 programs in when you have a kiddo with ABC skill access programming?
Most of them, and I'm like doing it more, working on kind of that emotion piece and the body sensations. But definitely sitting down and talking about like with the kiddo, what's hard for you, what's easy. Getting that information in place is really cool.
Yeah, for sure. And the other stuff I have is a problem solving conversation, programming around problem solving, programming around compromising. And then I left the little nugget for last, but sometimes I have active programming and passive programming. So, active programming are those programs that RBTs are following their written programs. They've got data collection, we're tracking those for insurance, right? And then sometimes I've got these little passive programs that I'm keeping an eye on, and I need RBTs thinking about them in the background. Like those rock stacking thing is one of those things that I kind of call a passive program. I might turn it into an active program if I find that it's not coming along with the programs that I have in place. So having some of those passive programs, like, man, if a kiddo who's usually stuck in a C day pops themselves out to an A day, man, we better be reinforcing that big time. Or like, whoa, if you see this tank, go that way, right? Giving RBTs kind of this framework to respond to things that aren't necessarily programmed, but are just kind of good intervention context type things. So anyway, all right, I did a little overview, but you guys can definitely kind of read through these programming pieces. That again, also, these are just helpful things for RBTs to be thinking about. So when you're working with RBTs with this ABC skill access levels, helping them learn about what is all involved in reporting capabilities, what is all involved in problem solving. These are really complex chains of behavior. So we need to do that. So anyway, all right. See you, Katy. And I think we're good. We got through it, but there's a little extra that we didn't talk about. Anyway, hopefully today was helpful. Working on thinking about kind of operant conditioning is at play, but we can successfully modify um, expectations, environmental demands, um, and support those learners. So, anyway, Terry, you never throw the conversation off. We love when people throw their questions and comments in there. That's how we all get better, right? If nobody says anything out loud, you never know what you're doing. So anyway, all right, you guys, and our 40-hour trauma-informed, neurodiversity aware training is under testing right now and should be out here in a little bit. So we're super excited. All right. See you guys. Have a great weekend, and we'll see you next week.